welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very
Of
excited.
course. Of course, of course. I'm so excited to deep dive into your specialty and what you're all about. So, can you just introduce yourself to everyone and just let everyone know who you are and what you do?
um, I teach people to actually transform their lives and to understand themselves on, you know, the deepest levels possible, from who they are as a soul spirit being to their emotions to, I guess, really awakening their inner self and their inner life. And then through that journey of self-knowledge and understanding, we go on a kind of exploration of transformation, I'm going to say. So essentially looking at what is showing up in your life, and rather than running away from it, whether it is a health condition or a challenge in your relationships or a challenge in your business or finances. And so rather than going, I can't deal with it, let's look the other way and let's push this aside, what I'm really asking people is to go deep, is to awaken to it, to explore it. And I teach them a lot of tools of how we can use what is within us to transform, I'm going to say.
Yeah, I love that. And I am the same way. I think that when you live in a very surface level energy, nothing feels right, nothing feels good. You're not really solving anything. You're just living in kind of like that survival mode, which is never
Mm.
healthy for anyone to be in. And I know that through your journey with energy medicine, that didn't just come from you opening up a book and studying that. I feel like it's come from your own lived experience, from what I understand. What was happening in your body and in your life that made you go down this path for yourself?
For me, I started really, really young. So I'm going to say on this journey, and also in terms of healing, discovering my abilities to see into other people's bodies and energy fields and so on. So for me, essentially, I feel like I had digestive problems from a really, really young age. So at 6, I remember being in a hospital and just having doctors not knowing what to do and just being in pain all the time and not being able to go to the toilet because I was holding on to things. And what was really interesting for me later on was to actually connect the pieces. And I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily connect the pieces in terms of all the aspects that play into our health. And for me, in particular, to do with my digestive system, it was very, very ancestral. And both of my grandparents had gone through the war. My grandmother was 12, I'm going to say, when her mother, who was, and I think I can say it on the show, who was a clairvoyant at the time, said to her, look, the war is coming. And by that stage, she had 8 children. And she said to my grandmother, the only person that's going to survive out of us all in terms of the children is going to be you, because you were born lucky. And she said to her, but the war's coming, and it's going to be rough. It's going to be really tough. And essentially, my grandmother had to watch her mother be killed to allow my grandmother to run and to save her own life. Um, and I just think the trauma of that meets 4 years of being in partisans and just trying to survive in the forest in Eastern Europe on her own just had a huge, huge impact. And my grandfather ended up in Siberia for essentially something he didn't do for 10 years of his life from 14 to 24. And by the time he got out, he weighed 24 kilos. He was 24 years old. And he'd had the gun at his head so many times. He'd starved to, he was tortured in so many different ways. And neither of them really, we talk about healing, like, and psychology and trauma release and all of this stuff. My grandparents said that they whispered to each other about what happened to them, because if they spoke loud enough, they could go back to, to jail or to some kind of, like, they could be killed. So all of this kind of suppression, and trauma and pain was being held somewhere. And one of the things I realized later on was that there is no one in the family who doesn't have digestive issues. They may not show up in, particular in the same ways for everyone, but no one has so far not had that, to my generation, I'm going to say. And this was one of the big things that I was growing up with. I was always in kind of some kind of digestive issue, some kind of pain. And the other thing that was really interesting that I'm not going to say everybody, but a lot of people in my family has, is psoriasis all over their skin. My dad has it. His twin sister is just covered in it. My grandfather had it, and other people in the family. So around the age of 11, I came from Eastern Europe, then lived in Italy for about 10 months, then came to Australia, to Melbourne, actually. And within a very short period of time, I didn't know one word of English. I was bullied, and I ended up with this psoriasis coming out on my elbows, all over my elbows and my knees. And again, everyone said, well, this is obvious. This is, because somehow everybody, lots of people in the family have it. So it's genetic. So I love this whole genetic word that gets thrown out. And, we just need to go to the doctor, and we need creams, and we need, tablets, and so on and so forth, which essentially did not do anything good for my digestive system doing that. But my mom was very much like medicine, doctor. There's nothing, the doctor was God, and we went regularly. And from there, when I was about between the ages of 14 and 15, I started getting back pain. And the back pain kind of started with this little, tinge of, oh, something feels like I have a little bit of lower back pain, to eventually over the years became extremely inflamed. There were time periods where I couldn't walk. And I was essentially getting quite scared to what was going to happen to me. When I was 19, I ended up getting pregnant, which was not in my plan at the time, let's just say. And I was scared on a few kind of fronts. One was that my health was deteriorating very quickly. There was a lot going on. I already had anxiety, and it kind of amplified. But in my mind, I just couldn't bring myself, not to have this baby. And there was a lot of chatter around, but, every friend that I had would have said that I would be the last person to have children, especially that young. Everyone thought maybe 30s or late 30s, but I was not that type of a person. I was like, I want to do acting, I want to write. I'm, very in pain, but motivated, I'm going to say. So it was a bit of a shock, and my health definitely deteriorated. I definitely got to a place where walking was really, really painful, very, very difficult. And I was just in constant pain. And then when at around, let's just say 8 months of pregnancy, I was wanting to do everything natural. I believe in natural kind of stuff by that stage. So I felt like I just had this intuitive sense that there was something really wrong with the baby and with the, for whatever reason, I just felt it was the heart. And the midwife, when I brought that up, she was saying, "Oh no, you're just anxious. You're being a little bit ridiculous. You're being, you're just overwhelmed. Everything's fine." And she said, and I said, "Well, it just feels like the movement is not the same anymore." And she said, "Yes, because you're getting bigger and, the babies don't move. They don't move that much. So just calm down and everything's going to be fine." And 2 weeks later, I went into labor and I remember getting to the hospital and, or the birthing center, I'm going to say. And at one point, there was another midwife that came up to me and she said, she put her hands on my belly and she said, "So, when was the last time that the baby moved?" And I just remember thinking that is such a crazy thing to ask whilst I'm in pain, and within, a very short period of time, I gave birth and there was no sound. And this midwife that was there, this nurse, she just said, "I'm sorry." And I have to say, there was nowhere in my reality or mind that I was prepared for the fact that this happens in Australia. And so I kind of I remember just having this thought straight away: this happens in India, not in Australia. So there must be something really, really, really wrong with me. And because nobody had actually explained anything to me that this could happen or, any possibility, because nobody talks about it. And I kind of really, I'm going to say I had a very profound spiritual experience. One of the first ones that I probably had within maybe half an hour of it, where I actually saw what I'm going to describe as an angelic being that felt very feminine. And I'm going to say she came to me and while I was in shock, staring at the ceiling, sorry. And she said to me, "You're going to have 2 children soon. It's okay. Everything's going to be okay." And she showed me a girl and a boy. And so interestingly, for the next 3 hours, I felt really, really calm. And I remember saying things like, "I don't know why this has happened, but whatever reasons happened, I'm going to use it and I'm going to help people and blah, blah, blah." I was saying these things for 3 hours, I'm going to say. And then it just hit me. And the depression, the suicidal thoughts, the feeling of not wanting to be here anymore, all of this stuff came up really, really strongly over, I'm going to say, many weeks, going into months. And my body it was just shutting down. Like everything was shutting down. I didn't want to get out of bed. I just, I just felt like totally numb. Like I didn't want to be here. In fact, I remember thinking constantly, "I just want to die. I want to experience it. I don't want to be here anymore. There's no point." And um, and it was really painful physically as well. One of the things people don't realize is it's actually your body prepares for a child, and then when you don't have it, it actually physically hurts. Like your arms hurt, your whole body hurts. And so yeah, I was getting progressively worse. My psoriasis was like all over. The anxiety was through the roof. My back was intensely inflamed. I was seeing a chiropractor 3 times a week who was actually, because my body was so inflamed, I couldn't actually have people touch me too like everything had to be very gentle. So I was working with one who worked with more the nervous system than actually cracking anything. I could not handle anything like that. So I eventually one day just got up. I couldn't really I wasn't functioning. I wasn't really a functioning person. And he said, and I made an appointment to see him because I was in agony. And when I got there, which was a 5 minute drive, and I just literally felt like I was out of my body, he came out and he just said to me, your body's stuck. And I said, yeah, I know that part. So what are you going to do? Should I come into the office? Kind of like, what are you going to do to help me? And he was very quiet for a moment, and he'd known me for over a year by that stage. And he said, there's nothing I can do. Your body wants to be stuck. Go home. Um, that's not what I expected him to say. So I was, I kind of went through this like suicidal depression, feeling into rage, like into, anger and rage. And I did leave the office, but yeah, in the car, I was just raging. And I had been studying linguistics, and like I said, I want to be a writer. So I'd been, at uni and so on. And my mind thought in linguistics, in language. And so I went, so he's saying my body's stuck. And obviously, I think I know I am stuck. I'm stuck in, this kind of rut. And in the victim mode, I know I feel like I'm the victim. And there must be more to this. There must be more to this languaging. There must be, it's almost like my body's so blocked and stuck, but it's speaking something, but I don't really understand that language. I don't really, I'm just not, it's like we're on a different wavelength. And it was almost like, I remember thinking, it's like when I came to Australia and I didn't know a word of English. And now it's like, here's Japanese or Chinese, and I don't even recognize the characters. So I actually made a decision, and I'm going to say that I made a decision on the level of thinking, feeling, and will, meaning I was going to change, I was going to do something very, very different, but it was connected to thinking, feeling, and action. And so I went home and I had been studying acting for since I was maybe 15, 16. So by that stage, I was 20. So I'd had a few years of it, and we'd done a lot of breath work, visualization, and so on. And so I thought to myself, you know what? I'm just going to start with what I know. I'm going to start with placing my hands on my back because I'm in so much pain. Anyway, I need to support my back. And so I placed my hands on my back. I started breathing into my back. And it occurred to me that unless I was in an acting class, I didn't actually, my breathing was extremely shallow. The only time I was breathing in a deep way was when I was doing these acting classes because I loved them, because I felt alive during them. And so I went, oh, okay, I'm gonna breathe into the pain, which was very scary because essentially every part of me went, this is going to get worse. If you're going to, it's going to expand, it's going to get worse, you're going to die, from this pain. But as I was doing this, my mind, as I was coming into with all of these not so positive thoughts, I started counting backwards from 30. And as I was doing this, there was this little moment of space that came. And in that space, I thought, you know what, if there is something divine out there, and what I shared that little story of seeing the angel, to me, it was two-sided, because on one hand, I was like, I really want to believe and trust that there is something divine and that it's going to help me. But on the other hand, I was like, why would God do this to me? Like, or is there even God? Or, well, like, I don't know. And so since I didn't have proof that I was going to have children, that I did, I was like, well, I hope that I do. And I'm going to hold on to that that experience. But the reality is I don't know, and I haven't. So it was kind of like, I'm gonna ask because I just don't know, but I did have that experience, but it was conflictual. So I actually didn't expect anything to happen. But within moments, I just started feeling this warmth pouring into my body. Since I had my eyes closed, it felt like golden sunshine just pouring in. And I could sense like something inside of me just unwinding. There's just this very, very clear unwinding that was different. And for whatever reason, within a few moments, it occurred to me to ask another question that I never thought of. It was literally not something it never came into my mind. I never considered it. But the thought was, I wonder what my back really looks like if I could see into it. And again, there was no real kind of imagining that anything would happen. But within a moment, it was as if somebody literally kind of went, I'm going to press this new button, and I could see my back. I could see my spine as if I had this x-ray vision, and I could see everything that was going on there, the inflammation and the twistedness and so on. Because I was literally twisted. I could not look straight. I was in pain if I stood, sat, lay, like I was in pain 24/7. And all of a sudden it occurred to me again, not from a victim perspective, but to actually ask this question of, why do I have all these things? What is the reason that I have all this? And the best way to describe this is as a vision meeting memory meeting wisdom. So it wasn't, I'm not going to say it was just memory, because I know when people say it at times and they go, oh, I had this memory that came up. It wasn't like that. It was kind of a vision based on memory and many different aspects that happen. So it was like I became aware of when I came to Australia, for instance, and I was bullied for being different, from being from Eastern Europe, for not speaking the language. Um, all of that I could sense made me very protective, very hardened, because I wasn't like that before. Very much like a loss of identity in a sense, because I was like, well, I can't be myself here because being myself is not okay. So then I'm not going to be myself. So I don't, I'm going to be something else. And this was around the time I started getting psoriasis all over my skin. Because when we start to understand what skin's about, it's essentially, what does it do for your body? It protects your body. So for me, it was like, I am in an environment that feels unsafe, that feels unprotected. So this became very clear through various scenarios that occurred. So it wasn't like one scenario that I saw. I saw several, many, many that showed up with that sense of wisdom. That's what it was about. And as I felt through this and acknowledged it, if it was like the next image showed up for me to understand, and that was around my family, in relation to my family meets when I went to high school. So my parents were in constant conflict with each other. Their communication, it was not very healthy. And there was always this sense of, I'm going into some kind of a war zone with them, because they're just not really understanding each other. Are they going to stay together? Are they going to, like, what are they going to do? But this doesn't feel relaxed or safe. And at the same time, my parents went, or my mom, I'm going to say, she went, okay, I'm going to put you into a school that is a private school that has, um, a lot of people from Eastern Europe, so that you're not alone. what she didn't realize was that, yes, there was a few people from Eastern Europe, but then there was also a lot of people who had come from like incredible, insane wealth. And I came from living, in a house with no toilet, with no bathroom, with no water, with like nothing. And so these people were not very excited about me and my friends coming from that type of background into their school, into their experience. And we were bullied now for a different reason, not because we couldn't speak the language, but because we weren't part of, we didn't come from that kind of experience. So I really felt like me and every friend that I had kind of started to self-protect again, and more and more and more. And so for me, it was my lower back. For a lot of my friends, they ended up with scoliosis. It was more their heart that they were protecting. So all of this just started to come as, insights to me. And then as I would acknowledge, and this took hours and hours of time, I'm going to say, then this whole thing with my grandparents and the digestive issues came up. And but I was one of those people, like, I didn't have boundaries. I was just a sponge. I just sponge off people's energy. And so eventually, after many, many hours, I ended up falling asleep. And when I woke up the next day, I knew that something was really different at the core of me. And my back wasn't twisted anymore. About 70% of the pain was gone. And I knew that something had changed and that I was going to now explore. I just wanted to explore. So for the next 3 weeks, I just kept exploring and exploring and journaling, because I'm a writer. So I just journal and journal and journal and journal. And so many different things connected together. And so by the end of these 3 weeks, all the psoriasis disappeared and never came back. My digestive system, I'm going to say, improved to a point where I could eat food and not just be in pain and not react like a crazy way. And the back pain completely disappeared and never came back. And my anxiety went right down. So I went, this is really interesting. And then I discovered that I could see into other people's bodies and energy fields. So this is a very, very long story.
You're probably wondering what just happened to the podcast. Me too. It's Jay. I'm Ben and Jess. And you know what's also Ben and Jess? Our lime glow candle.
No, but it makes complete sense. And I think it like paints the picture of how you discovered that this was so special and so different to the way other people were looking at things. So if you had someone like sitting in front of you right now who has all these things going on, it might not be the same things as what you've just described, but they might have, persistent headaches or things like that. Where do they need to start? Like, do we start by doing what you've just described, like sort of taking the time to sort of tap into each of the areas through a meditation? Or what would your advice be for someone who just doesn't know what to do with all the things that are going on with them?
I think there's probably two parts to that. I'm going to say it depends how awakened somebody is energetically and internally. And I think this is a really great point that I want to make, that although I spent, before my own self-healing, right, I would have spent at least from I'm going to say almost 3 years going to different practitioners, and at least over a year to the chiropractor who worked on my nervous system. So I don't believe that it happened just from nothing, right? I really, really feel that to access information within yourself, you have to wake your body up first. So I do not think or believe that had I not had that kind of preparation, even though I didn't know that that's what was happening, that I would have had access in the same way. Because most people, when they're in pain, they're so disassociated on or whatever's going on health wise, they're so disconnected, they're so numbed that for them to experience what I had in such a short time, in such a clear way, is usually not the journey, not the way. So what I teach people to do is to start with actually sensitizing themselves. So step one is to awaken your capacity to connect. Well, firstly, it is to make a decision, I'm going to say, because unless you make a decision, nothing's going to happen. But step two would be to awaken this, nervous system receptivity, let's just say. And the way that I teach people to do that is to usually to stand up and scan their bodies and understand, where am I at now? Like, where am I at right now? Let me become aware of all the numbness that I feel and acknowledge it, right? Where do I feel pain? Where do I feel numb? Where do I feel disconnected? What do I feel? Because without having that awareness of where you start, you actually don't know where you're going. And from there, I'll go, okay, place your hands on the part of your body that feels either that you want to discover more about. So there might be pain, there might be disassociation, numbness, anything. So start with that part. And so they'll put their hands on that part of the body, let's say their heart often, or their chest. And they'll say, okay, breathe into that part. And if you could become aware of what is being covered up, and that covering up could have a shape, what shape would it be? And if it had a color, what color would it be? And if it had a sensation, what sensation would it be? And then I would say, okay, once they're aware of it, and I've never met a person who can't do that, right? Who can't describe that. And then I would go, okay, now I'm going to ask you to imagine that in front of you there is a purple fire, and all of us have seen fire. So I don't care if you don't visualize it, but you know what a fire feels like and looks like. So now we're going to physically take this energy out and place it into the fire. And we're going to shake your arm, one arm. And you're going to repeat the word clear, which again, a lot of people have my book, The Secret Language of Your Body, and it's one of the words that we use for letting go. And so you're going to repeat the word clear, and then we're going to come back and we're going to explore a little bit deeper. And as we're exploring, the idea is that there's a part of you that starts to trust you and starts to feel safer to give you the insights that you need. And if I can just say a few things as well about what I hear a lot of people say, and people say things like, and I've said it as well when I first started doing this work, oh, we have cellular memory and we have this. I don't agree. I believe that anymore. I also don't believe in root cause. I just want to say, I think that it is a way that people say things without an understanding of the depth of healing, because there's no such thing as a root cause. What there is there is a foundation, right? There is a foundation where you start, and then there's many, many, many layers of why you become who you are. And those layers need to be unwound, not as oh, I'm going to get to the root cause, but as in, I want to know myself. I want to understand myself. Now, when people talk about cellular memory, again, I just want to, laugh a little bit because, and again, I've said it myself many, many times. And it's kind of an easy entrance point, but what cellular memory actually is that we have the physical body and then we have subtle bodies. And one of the subtle bodies we have is called the etheric body, which is connected to memory, because cells don't have memory on their own. It makes no sense. It's illogical. And the reason I say this is because we already know that if somebody has a part of their body that is cut off, they still feel, right, often the pain or whatever is going on there. So how is this even logical that we have some kind of cellular memory? You don't have a cell. You don't have that part of the body, right? And I just feel like people in this industry and, like love generalizations because they don't actually study. They kind of study for a very short period of time and then they go, this is what it is. And I know because I've done it too. But when you actually have done this as long as I have, which is over 25 years, and you do study it properly, you start to understand that actually generalizations cause problems, because the more you are generalized, the more you actually will miss things. And this is why I say about this root cause idea, because everybody likes the sound of it, but if you truly only believe that, you will miss so many things, so many things, so many layers, because you see, whatever has been created inside of us may show up as illness, but it also shows up as literally everything in your life. It shows up of how you are as a parent. Mm-hmm. It shows up in business. It shows up how you are as a partner. It shows up how you are, how you treat yourself, how you are as a person. It shows up how you are as a child to somebody. It shows up in literally every single way. It shows up of how you exercise or not exercise. It shows up how you look after yourself. It shows up in terms of your spirituality, whether you stay on the surface or go deep. And I feel like we're so frightened in our society to actually explore things and to say that we're complex instead of to constantly think that we're simple, that we end up just constantly missing the most important pieces, I'm going to say, of where we need to look at in our life and what we need to look at. And so, again, just coming back, I start with people understanding that they have a lot of numbness. They have a lot of disassociation. And I try to awaken the desire inside of them to want to know themselves.
Yeah, I love that. That's a beautiful way of articulating how to get to the place where you can actually start healing. You need to be open to it and aware. So I love this. So if people want to work with you, how are they going to contact you? How are they going to get in contact and, get you to start awakening them? Do you have Instagram, website? Where can they find you?
Yeah, I have a website and it's very simple. So it's just innasegal.com. And my biggest thing with people is to actually start to guide them towards self-discovery. And so what I've done over the last, I'm going to say a few years, I've been putting together masterclasses on many different topics, starting from looking at the secret language of your body and actually understanding what each part of the body is showing. And I know a lot of people talk about it, but I kind of feel a little bit like I was at the beginning of that journey of, and as I was mentioning, my book, The Secret Language of Your Body, has been it's actually been translated into 27 languages at this point and has sold over 1 million copies.
Wow.
And the book is also there to guide people towards self-connection, but I wanted to expand on things, and so I created these masterclasses that are free at this point for a short period of time, because I really, really want people to not have an excuse of why they should take some time for themselves. Because it literally, I mean, it starts with making a decision and taking some time to explore. And so in these masterclasses, and you'll see there's a masterclass page, or you can just go to innasegal.com/secret. The idea is to give people so many different perspectives and points of view on healing and what's possible, and what is healthy and what is not healthy. So I want to say that for me, I has tuned into tens of thousands of people over the last 25 plus years. And in tuning into people, I have seen that we can take anything and can really help somebody, or we can take anything as simple as breathing and we can damage if the person doesn't know what they're doing and they don't know how to guide and what they're actually teaching. And so it's so important for people now to go, in my own journey, I want to work with people who are detailed, who are very experienced. And I also want to know about myself in a way where I don't skip steps.
Yeah. I love that. Well, I am sure a lot of people will be contacting you or looking at your masterclasses. It sounds amazing. But before we go, I have some random questions for you that I always ask guests, and yours is super random, so you cannot prepare for this shit. Anyway, Your first question is, who decided the alphabet order and why did we all just agree? It's so true. Who decided that? A, B, C, D. It's actually quite funny. But anyway, you answer.
I don't know the full answer to the question, but I'm going to say that obviously in different countries, in different, we have language has, I think language expresses something really innate within us. And so I'm going to say that from my understanding that we have higher beings that influence people in different countries, in different cities, which is why different countries feel so unique. Like you go from a place, you can go from Melbourne to Queensland, where I am at the moment, to Europe, and each place just has a different sense, a different vibe, a different energy. And from my research into spirituality in that sense and into higher beings, I really believe that the archangelic beings influence people, and they influence language, even accents. How we speak is so different. And so I would say that without us knowing, when language was first kind of created, and obviously there's different languages, it came from a higher influence. And then there were people who had that type of brain and that type of linguistic mind that started, whether it was Latin or what ways of putting sounds together, that then, led to the alphabet and the English language, I would say.
Yeah, so it's Spirit's fault. At the end of the day, it's Spirit's fault we're doing this. I love that. Okay, your next question. Why does 5 minutes feel fast or slow depending on what you're doing?
I feel like that's all to do with connection, so you either feel like I'm so connected, I'm so enlivened, let's say, in this conversation, in this exchange, or in this experience, and it feels I really feel like when it feels good, time passes fast.
Yeah.
And when it feels bad, it becomes extensive. But when there's fear, it becomes 1 minute can feel like hours.
I agree. And we all know that feeling for sure. Well, I have loved chatting to you. Thank you so much for being here. It's been so lovely to hear your story and to get all your insights. Amazing. Thank you.